Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 400 of the Stacey West podcast. I'm your host, Ben, and tonight I'm joined by Charlie. How you doing, mate, on this momentous episode?
I feel like a little bit of an imposter on the 400th episode. It is such a big occasion that we're not really celebrating. Well, I say we are celebrating in the fact that you've got to listen to me and Ben for the next hour. So I would very much celebrate that if I was you. But no, it's of course a huge effort. Primarily, let's be honest, from you and Gaz to have gotten us here to this 400th episode. So I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was looking a little bit earlier on, and it is nearly 7 years to the day. August the 23rd, 2018 was the first episode of the podcast, and obviously since then we've gone from. Well, I think initially we talked about doing one every couple of weeks, and then shortly after that became a well, let's do it once a week. People seem to like it, and then as the time's gone on, we've grown. We've had people in, people have come, people have gone, they've gone on to other things, and then we've got a team now, and a team of 5 that split the duties twice a week, which is I didn't think we'd get to this kind of stage, but I'm delighted we have, and obviously we've got a wonderful audience that keep on showing up week after week. So yeah, I mean, I'm just looking through live comments already. We've got a ton. I'm delighted with this. This is fantastic. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like Charlie said, we're not having a massive celebration tonight about the 400th episode. So we did have a couple of plans, which obviously other circumstances around things at the moment mean that we're not really in a position to do that, but we will be doing our deadline day live. So that is probably going to be something of a bit of a celebration of the podcast then, because as we kind of realized the other day, deadline day is at 7 p.m.
It's awful. And isn't it a Monday as well?
It's 7 o'clock on a Monday night. What kind of transfer deadline's that? It's mad, isn't it?
Do you know what? The game has gone. That is on par with using your first name on a shirt kind of levels of game gone. I'll be honest. I'm not very happy. I had to have a conversation at work today about trying to get away earlier on deadline day so that I don't miss it. But yeah, it's weird to have those conversations. We should be staying up till the early hours of the morning on a live stream, not finishing at 7 o'clock and going for our dinner. So we're not going to do anyway, but we'll keep that a little bit more under wraps for now. Yeah,
so that's that one. But no, how you doing, mate? What you been up to? Much going on in Gibraltar at the minute?
There's always lots going on in Gibraltar, but not really too much for me. I had a very busy weekend, to be fair. I was over in Spain on Saturday. It was a friend of mine's birthday. So went over there and celebrated that in the evening. Got back about 3 a.m. on Sunday morning to then be up and back out for more drinks at about 12:30 on Sunday for a full day of football. So very enjoyable, but my God, was I knackered when I got to work on Monday.
Well, I went away at the weekend to surprise a friend of mine who moved down to Bognor Regis, of all places, a few years back. We organised a little trip in secret. So we were like, yeah, cool, let's go down there. We showed up at a pub that is just down the road. We sent a message on WhatsApp saying, does anybody fancy a pint? And sent him a photo of his pub. And he was like, where are you guys really? We're like, no, we're in the pub. Come down. So we did that, and then we went out on Saturday, and I had a bit of a tumble. We were in a bar, and there was a step coming back from the toilet. I'd only had like 1 pint, so I wasn't even drunk.
Yeah, that's what they all try and say.
No, genuinely, like I was walking back out the loo. And I caught a glimpse of the telly, and I was like, oh yeah, Sky Sports News is on. Tried to read one of the results. I put my foot out, and there was a step, and the step was not marked, and it was the same carpet as the rest of the floor. And I just put my foot down, and I rolled my ankle, and my friend came to me and said, I thought something fell off the wall because I hit the floor hard. Genuinely thought I'd broken my ankle. It was that painful. And then it started to swell quite quickly, but I couldn't move it, so that wasn't too bad. Sat on a sofa, and then my mate looked at me and goes, "Are you all right?" And just immediately went white as a sheet and passed out. And then apparently I was out for about 30 seconds or so, came to, and my first question, because this happened at around 10 to 4, my first question was, "Are we still 1-0 up?" So I was all right with that. But I've been hobbling around since then.
How are you doing now?
Yeah, all right. The swelling's gone down, but it's just very purple at the moment. Not nice.
Well,
but
considering it's all right now, and you're on the mend now, I can tell you to next time actually watch where you're going, Ben. I just feel like it needs to be said. Just keep your eyes on where you're going next time. Okay?
Yeah, but you expect the floor to just carry on, not have a bloody step that's not. Anyway, look. So now I know how Jack Moylan feels, because my ankle is very, very sore. Obviously, that's where the similarities start and end. But shall we look at what's happened at the club over the week? Because we had a little bit of news before the game on Tuesday, so it immediately it had a bit of an immediate impact on the game. Lincoln City have signed Frankie Okoronkwo from Everton, not Liverpool. Nearly went wrong there. From Everton on a season-long loan, and 20 years old, can play anywhere across the front three. Played at Salford last season, played 22 times. I think he scored on his debut, if I remember rightly, against MK Dons, and obviously in the Pizza Trophy or whatever it was, he scored for Everton's under 21s against us as well. So
that was that 4-2 game, wasn't it? That pretty mad one.
Yeah. I think he scored. Did he score the equaliser? I can't remember, but that was that. And then obviously Gary and Chris spoke a little bit about him on Sunday's pod. It was confirmed on Monday that is happening, and he basically went straight into the side. Straight into the squad rather for Tuesday night's game. So, this feels to me like this is the club's kind of this is the sort of temporary replacement for Jovan Makama. Obviously, the player that can play in that kind of front three. He seems like he's got all the the relevant attributes. I think the interesting thing was that in the press conference and in the press release, it did say that Marcus Cabala's talking about a lot of his attributes and a lot of this and a lot of that, and he's got a contract until the end of this season with Everton. So do you think, Charlie, that there could be a potential loan to buy sort of situation with Frankie?
I think that depends solely on how he performs over the course of this season, doesn't it? You mentioned their temporary solution to the Jovan Makama problem in terms of that hole that he's left in that attacking line. He could become the permanent solution to that if he has a really strong year, impresses, gets not just kind of that immediate impact, but also gets a few goals to go with it as well. Because again, I think that's something that we've probably lacked in players in those positions over the last couple of years. So if we can, obviously, until Jovan was kind of able to do that last year, so if we were able to get him in those kind of positions, really solidify a spot for him in the squad in terms of an exact position and role, a little bit like, again, we nailed down with Jovan towards the second half of last season in particular in that right wing spot, then I don't see any reason why not. I mean, Everton clearly rate him. I believe he was purchased for £1 million as a 16-year-old when they brought him in from Sunderland. I mean, stupidly crazy numbers. But I very much agree that he could be one of those that we do look to in the future, especially if he is out of contract at the end of this year.
Yeah, I think that there was a question that came up in the Discord around, where do we see him slotting in this season, and does it potentially does it indicate a bit of a shift from not necessarily relying on loans over the past few years? For me, I think even if this isn't a loan to buy kind of deal, I think this keeps Zane Okoro on the back burner as our sort of, more long-term Joven replacement slash asset that can be sold. Because, obviously, I think it's too soon for Zane to break into the first team in the levels that we would, some fans maybe would expect. But it's definitely a signing that probably excited. I mean, you always see Premier League youngster, you think, okay, well, the immediate one is, does this give us the likes of Morgan Rogers or Brennan Johnson or whatever? So, yeah, interesting one on that one.
It is. I think there's kind of a couple of parts to this. In the first sense, obviously, you just said there, obviously, about Zane Okoro, and I think it's very easy to sort of compare two young lads in that sense. But why can't we have more than one? If this does materialise from a loan into a permanent, we want more than one. We want as many as we can in those positions, especially because they're the big money positions, as Joven has already proved, absolutely blitzing our record transfer sale. Huge on that if we can start getting a couple or more. But at the moment, obviously, it is a loan, and we need to see it as a loan. He is probably one of those players, and we hear Jez talk about them a lot whenever he does interviews with us or interviews with BBC Radio Lincolnshire or anywhere else. You hear him talk a lot about towards the end of the window, there are certain moves that become available, more than likely in the loan market, that simply aren't available at other points of the window. And I have a feeling that this is exactly one of those loans. What's happened here is we've obviously realised that we really like the player. We'd like to bring him in at some point. We've tracked him. Everton go, oh, he's available. Right, that's it. Now we'll move in. And it's probably worked quite well in the fact that it happened not long after Joven moved on. So we weren't kind of waiting and desperately needing this player, but instead we were kind of really happy that it did become available. So that's very much how I see this as a loan move. And obviously, the more minutes he can get, the better. It's really, really difficult when a player comes in from Premier League 2, because coming into the EFL, it's a total different ball game. Obviously, he was at Salford last season and did get some good minutes and a couple of goals there as well. But overall, it's a big step up for him. I can't see him playing 90 minutes week in, week out at the start of the season, but being a bit part player and a squad player is exactly what we would want him to do. We've commented over the last couple of weeks on actually how weak our bench looks. So depth like this is always a way forward, especially for a player who's got a little bit of height to him, can probably be a good outball, and by the looks of it, also has a little bit of pace to him as well, being able to get in behind and running directly at defenders. And let's be honest, everybody loves a player like that because they're the ones who get you off your feet.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's an exciting one for me. Obviously, it's kind of the sexy signing, isn't it? Like you say, it's the player that comes in and hopefully gets everybody off their feet and gets them moving. If he can crack on and do what he's clearly able to do from the sounds of it, it's going to be a really, hopefully, a really good signing for us. But he did go straight into the squad, but he did not make the starting 11 for Tuesday night's game against Northampton. Unchanged side, I think, from Saturday. We had Wickens, Darikwa, Towler, Hackett, Bayliss, Collins, McGrandles, Bradley, Street, Hamer, and Draper. So Draper starting again in that kind of 10 role, just behind James Collins, and everything else was as it was. Against Plymouth, no real surprises there, was there, Charlie?
No, not really. We're kind of forced in a way to a certain squad at the moment, and with that also a little bit of a certain starting 11. House and Eric Ring obviously on the bench. I didn't really see either of them getting into the starting 11 on Tuesday night. So yeah, no surprises. Was pretty happy with it overall. It's also a little bit interesting to see James Collins start back-to-back games on a Saturday and a Tuesday. Could obviously make for an interesting conversation going into the game against Bolton, depending on, again, what we're kind of like in terms of personnel there. But that's obviously a conversation for a little bit later on. Overall, yeah, happy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a good point, which we'll pick up on. But yeah, I mean, the game, I thought we started pretty brightly, to be honest, on Tuesday night. I think for probably, well, seemingly joining in with the consensus, I thought for half an hour we were well on top in the game. You know, I've got notes here. It's just, you know, early cross, good work from Draper out to street. It was just a bit too deep for everybody, and then literally a couple of minutes later, the deep ball was aimed for Rico. I wonder if there was a weakness identified for Northampton's right back, because we did seem to load a lot of balls over the top into that kind of area where Rico would be lurking, and he was really, really heavily involved in that first sort of 15 minutes or so. So I just wonder if that was one where the scouting squad have looked at it and gone, "Ooh, we could take advantage of that." But yeah, lots of sort of high balls over the top, weren't there?
Yeah, there was the space to do it though as well. You know, it like exactly like you said, they'd obviously noticed that, and it wasn't just lump ball for the sake of lump ball. You know, it was all aimed directly to obviously on the left. There was also some brilliant distribution from George Wickens multiple times in the game to go to both the left and the right sort of wing. And was really, really impressed with his distribution overall last night. And it started like that as well. And yeah, we were able to find spaces and find opportunities. Realistically, half chances at best, though. And you'd have probably just liked to see a little bit more coming from those sort of positions that we were able to find ourselves in. But the more of those positions you do find yourself in, the more likely you're going to get to have those chances a little bit later on in the game. And, you know, and obviously we did get a chance a little bit later on as well. But I think the biggest chance within the first sort of 15 minutes of the game wasn't a Lincoln City chance at all, though.
Yeah, no, that was the the first real chance of the game. I mean, Tom Hamer played. I think he played Tendai a little bit short, and what was his Tyrese? Oh, what's his surname? I can't remember because he only had Tyrese on the back of his shirt, which is there we go.
Former Derby lads.
Great guy, yeah. Got the ball and just sprinted well clear, well clear, and you think, this is going to be a problem. So he got clear, and I think all credit. Well, there's two people that deserve all the credit in this one. First one is obviously George Wickens. George Wickens did a phenomenal job in keeping that out with a really strong save. He kept himself big and managed to get it around the post. But Tom Bayliss has to take a lot of credit for this, because the way that he tracked back and the way that he managed to get back in time was nothing short of miraculous. He obviously didn't get the tackle in, but he managed to push him out wide just enough to kind of make the angle of the shot a little bit wider. And yeah, really, really clever play from Tom Bayliss. But it was that little warning sign that, you know, we've said before that we're occasionally prone to individual mistakes or anything along those lines. It was just that little flash of the bad things that were happening from last season. When Fauna runs through.
It was. Just on that, when I first watched it, I was watching it with a friend of mine, the game, and when I first watched it, I was basically laughing at Tyrese Fauna because I'm that nice of a guy, because it seemed as though he was dragging the ball out himself so far wide and giving himself the worst possible angle to shoot at. And I'm thinking, what on earth are you doing? Like, if you're a Lincoln player, I'm coming on this podcast and I'm talking about that chance in the same way that we spoke about Tendai Darikwas a couple of weeks ago against Wimbledon, and just having really poor decision making, and very much laughing at the fact that really glad at the fact that it wasn't a striker in that position, it was a midfielder, and that's the reason why he just wasn't able to get his angles right at all. And then they showed the replay and they showed the head-on angle, and you saw actually how close Tom Bayliss was and how he was pressing him out wide the whole time. And you're thinking that is exceptional defending, and the speed to be able to get back, and the desire to get back as well. And don't get me wrong, it's easier to do in the 10th minute than it is in the 80th minute if you've been on the pitch the whole time. I get that, but it doesn't matter. To be able to do that and to have the perfect position the whole time, Yeah, totally agree with you. Huge credit goes to Tom Bayliss on that one. And yeah, to be fair, Tyrese Fornham not actually as sort of as poor in that position as what I first thought.
No, I thought, to be fair, I thought he had a decent game.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then, yeah, a couple more chances. I think there was a really, really clever move with Collins out on the left, played it into Rico. He cut inside, had a shot that I think might have hit Rob Street and went out. But there was genuinely some really lovely football being played in that first half hour. If Gaz was, I'm sure he'd be talking about, his dad talking about soft feet and things like that. There was an awful lot of those little passing triangles and the pastures of play where you can see what's going on, and it's just a joy to watch. I thought some of the football we were playing last night in that first half an hour was just wonderful. And then I was actually typing out, making notes as the game's going on, and I was typing out a note and literally put Draper's looking sharp, and as soon as I hit the P on sharp, Tendai puts the ball in and Draper puts his foot on the cross. If that doesn't win our goal of the month competition, we must have some absolute screamers in our back pocket, because that was a beautiful goal. Strikes it on the edge of the 18, goes off one post, cuts back across and just ends up in the back of the net. It's just the technique involved with that. Frankly, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
If that was James Collins, we'd be talking about the perfect poacher, the perfect striker, the perfect number 9. And there is no reason why we shouldn't be saying the exact same for Freddy Draper there. The goal, first of all, it was coming for Freddie, because he was, just as you said, looking really sharp, getting himself into really good positions. And realistically, he deserved to get something for that within the game at some point yesterday. And obviously, when that came nice and early, I say nice and early in the first half, it was 20-odd minutes in, wasn't it? But nice and early in the first half, then, yeah, really, really pleased for him. And the technique, totally agree. Brilliant ball from him. And it started a little bit of a conversation in the Discord as well, just about, are we now starting to see the best of Draper? He's spoken so many times so far this early season and over the summer about the fact that this window for him, this kind of summer break, was all about his kind of hard reset of, I'm going to come back fitter, stronger, better, so that you have to play me and I'm not giving you a choice, effectively, to Michael Skivala. And I love that. That's exactly the kind of desire that you want to see a player have, especially now with Jovan gone. I think our kind of attention in terms of a young academy prospect who's now hitting that first team stride, we can solely be talking about Draper in that. And of course, that always comes with the caveats of, okay, if it doesn't go well, there's probably going to be a little bit more of a negative attitude towards him. But when it does go well, as it so far is at the start of this season, it just makes you feel that whole lot better when it is when he is sort of being able to thrive. And I think, again, a couple more games in a row now, and I see sky's the limit for Freddy Draper. I think he's going to have a really, really good season. Hopefully his kind of breakout season in our first team squad this year as well. And the kind of positions that he's going at with James Collins also in the team really, really work. That kind of hybrid 9 and 10 roles that they're sort of going between them as well a lot of the time, depending on the sort of positioning of the play. I think works really well. They complement each other very well. And obviously, who better for a role model for someone like Freddy Draper than James Collins? So yeah, really good technique on the goal. And it kind of bookended a really strong first 20 minutes for him in the game as well.
Yeah, definitely so. I think it was just a really strong performance from for that first half hour or so. The thing that changed it for me, and I know we've said that it was the first half an hour that was really strong. Northampton started to come back into the game. I don't think it was a case of us letting them do it. I think they kind of, that's the way that they play. That that they're an aggressive side, or not physically aggressive, but they want to be kind of what we want to be. I think as Skibala quoted as saying, we want to be on the front foot. We want to be a front foot side and aggressive in that respect. And they made it really difficult. They did make it really, really difficult for us to play against them. And we had a little chat off air just beforehand. And I think we both agreed that the moment that maybe changed the game was a really innocuous one. It didn't look like it was much of anything. You know, Riley Towler went up for a header with Jack Burrows. And it looked to me like he got fouled, but they both came off with, you know, both came away with it rather with a bit of a knock to the head. And the referee booked Riley Towler, which that felt harsh. But we kind of picked up on it in the chat as we were going on. That I think the problem was it highlights essentially what we all know, that we need a natural left back. There's no two ways about it at this point, because Riley Towler is a young lad who is coming in as a centre back. He's playing at left back, and twice now when he's been given a yellow card, it's just allowed the opposition to get down that right hand side a little bit more, because he's maybe a lack of experience is probably the way to look at it. But if he's not that natural left back, he may not know fully how to deal with that. If he's on a yellow card, you can't go snapping into tackles if you're not confident. You know, it felt to me like this could be a problem because we don't have somebody to replace him. So what do you do to protect him? And we'll talk about that in a second with the second half, because he got booked 42 minutes, so just before half time, didn't he?
Yeah, it does kind of change the game for us a little bit in that, because we don't have the squad depth we would want in defence. I think even if we were to see, for example, Sean Rowan last season get a booking, let's say in the 40th minute or the 42nd minute, whenever it was, we didn't really have that same sort of fear. And in terms of cover, we didn't really have that much cover at left back last season either. But we sort of saw a lot of experience from Rowan in that position, and from the team to be able to kind of protect Rowan in that position as well. So it didn't really instill that same level of fear, whereas for Riley Towler, it did. And that's not to say that Riley Towler's a worse player in any way, shape or form, but it's to say that he's probably not your out-and-out left-back, that he's, like you say, able to kind of know exactly where his position needs to be when he's on a yellow card, because that very much does differ to when you don't have that hanging over your head. So, yeah, totally agree. We very much had to change our system, and Northampton probably had a little bit more that they could kind of go against us, for the second half. And then it was, first of all, about, okay, let's get to half-time, because I think there's 3 minutes of added on time in the first half. And it did get a little bit frantic at times, and it was kind of a look, let's get into the changing room, because as we saw against Wimbledon, tactical changes are probably preferred at halftime than to be made earlier on in the game, and we didn't want to lose our advantage too early.
Yeah, so we did switch to a 3 at the back, which allowed Rico Hackett to come back and maybe make some of those tackles that you'd expect a left back to be making, and get involved a bit more, which, as we say, protected Riley Towler from maybe going in a little bit late and picking up a second yellow. But yeah, no, I thought we did look a little bit shaky towards the end of the half. I think they were very keen to push us and press quite hard. It was just it felt like a not quite clinging on, but I think we were definitely glad when the halftime whistle went, and that didn't change in the second half. Northampton came out of the traps in the second half. I thought they looked, decent. I think the problem that was identified, Chris and Gaz were talking about it on Sunday.
Okay. Ben seems to have just dropped straight out. Not quite sure what happened there. But just to pick up on exactly where he was just talking there. Northampton really did come out strong, didn't they? And it was a little bit dangerous for us in terms of what we had to do over the course of the second half, especially early on in that time period as well. I am just seeing where Ben is. He's not actually messaged, so he should be okay. So from the course of the second half, obviously starting it off, they did come out really strongly. I'm just going to wait for Ben because at the moment there's no point me talking because this is going to get cut out anyway. So. Hello, YouTube. How are we? There are a few people asking in the comments about whether or not we've got any special guests on here this evening for the 400th episode. We don't, as me and Ben mentioned at the start of the show. We're not doing anything like that at the moment. That'll be kind of deadline day if and when that does happen. And yeah, a couple of people talking about a potential new signing as well. We're going to touch on that a little bit later on. But there's been some interesting rumours, hasn't there? A few photos that have been going around on social media as well. Proper old school photos. There, Ben has just messaged. He is currently having Wi-Fi issues. Give me a second. God's sakes. Tell us a joke. Yeah, I'm not funny. Not the last time I checked anyway. Do you know what? We have got a comment in here, though, which I very much agree with. Ben probably has had enough of doing these. After 400 episodes in, I wouldn't be too surprised to hear that he's had enough. Bless him. He has said apparently it was his Virgin Media that seems to have gone down. So, yeah, that's why you don't go with Virgin Media. I used to have so many problems with them. So, Virgin Media, awful for anybody that does use them. Do you know what? Let's go through some of the YouTube comments then. We'll start going through some of those now. Say hello to the people that are in. Steve Barton, good evening. Walter, evening. How are we doing? Andy Brown, good evening to yourself as well. Richard Godson, good evening. Just heard a certain Ukrainian may be announced this evening. Now, I'm not quite sure about this evening. However, like I said, there has been a couple of photos circulating around social media, isn't there? There was plenty of you in as well today, by the way, before we started at 7 o'clock. Do you not have anything better to do with your Wednesday evenings than sit and wait for us? But we very much appreciate the support. Good evening to Mick Kennedy and to Harry Warby as well. Oliver, evening. Sax will be good evening. David, good evening. Like I said, no special guest on today's. And just as Don Clark said, let's be fair. If we were going to have a special guest, do you not think that Gary would have been on here to do it? Emily, evening. How are you doing? Leslie, good evening to yourself as well. Steve Jollins, good evening. Do you know what? It's an interesting point because I've seen that mentioned a couple of times about it being the luckiest 3 points last night. The question is do you guys think it was actually lucky? Because I'm not 100% sure that it was necessarily lucky, more planned. Maybe not exactly the way we would have wanted to do it, but at the end of the day, it was a win where we looked relatively composed at certain points and resolute at the back. And I'll be honest, I'll take those on a Tuesday night away from home any day of the week. It looks like Ben may be coming back in. In terms of the Gibraltar weather, like in August, it is that hot that I will be going and putting my aircon on in a minute as well. Ben, are you actually going to stay with us this time?
I swear to God. I swear to God, I want to move away from Virgin Media as quickly as I possibly can.
You should. They're awful.
Anyway, where were we?
Well, you started talking about the second half. I decided I was going to try and pick up on the second half and then realised, actually, what's the point of me saying all of this? Because this will just get cut out anyway. So we'll go to the second half.
Yeah, we'll start again with the second half. So I thought Northampton came out of the traps. Really, I thought they looked really, they looked decent, they looked strong. I was saying that one thing that I think Chris and Gaz were kind of identifying on Sunday's pod was kind of it was around those. Sorry, I've lost all of my stuff. All of my stuff has just gone. It's not there anymore. Bear with
Right,
me.
would you
Sorry.
like to get yourself composed again?
Yeah,
here,
we'll come back. We will come back to it. Let me just, honest to God, this
right,
is...
I'm going to carry on saying hello to YouTube because at the moment they're a little bit more coherent than what you are. So, probably better.
Right, everything is now refreshing.
Oh,
Because
you've got everything back now, have you?
I think so, yeah. But John does say it must be a Virgin thing. My internet went down. Gah! What a nightmare this is. Right, okay. So, yeah, Northampton started really strong. It was just a difficult period. I don't think we really knew how to handle them. And as we mentioned, that kind of shift into that three at the back for a little while did throw us off a little bit. It was just really tricky to deal with and handle.
Ben, I've just got a quick question for you, mate.
Yes.
Can you sort your internet out, please? Rachel's trying to watch TV.
I'm sure she is. But yeah, it just felt like it might be a bit of an uphill struggle for us. Obviously, we didn't really have much in terms of an outlet for any blame. I don't think. It was just a game where the second half felt so much different to the first half, and I was really, really glad that we kept. We had that 1-goal lead to keep hold of. Really, I don't think we really threatened. We didn't have a single shot in the second half, whether that was on or off target. Northampton had a few. There was a couple of nervy moments, including one which was just a bizarre sequence of events where the ball came across, and it was well, I think somebody said it looked a little bit like a balloon. It sort of hangs in the air, doesn't it? And it goes amongst a bunch of players. How that didn't hit somebody's hand and get given as a...
For the record, it definitely did hit somebody's hand. But it just didn't get given. Yeah, the question isn't how did it not hit someone's hand. The question was how did the referee not give anything either way, actually, did he?
No, Wickens had to tip it round for a corner. But I just felt that it was a really, really nerve. Actually, that bit was at the end of the first half, wasn't it? At that end with the chaos.
You see, I was thinking that earlier. I actually couldn't remember off the top of my head.
It was that was the end of the first half.
First half or second half, yeah.
I mean, the thing that Chris and Gaz pointed out on Sunday, and I've just remembered it, so I'll bring it back up, is that they identified that Northampton have trouble scoring, and that was incredibly evident last night. I thought if they were a team that had, for example, a James Collins in the side, we would have lost that game last night. Wickens did make some excellent saves. I think we talked about it in the group, and I think unanimously he was our man of the match. I think he was superb last night. But on the whole, there isn't a huge amount really to talk about for the second half, other than how well we managed to put in that away performance. We knew that we were 1-0 up. We knew that we had something to hold on to, and I think the way that the discipline and the way that everybody kept themselves, really well marshaled was just brilliant. So, yeah, while you look at the performance and you go, "Oh bloody hell, that was a tough watch," it was, but I think we did really well to sort of cling on to that 1-0 win.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you decided just to leave for 10 minutes earlier, one of the kind of discussion points that I just wanted to bring up with kind of the YouTube comments directly. There's lots of people that have spoken about it being kind of a lucky result. I've seen that across social media a lot as well. We were lucky to hold on to keep it 1-0. You can argue that, and again, I think against a side who know how to find the back of the net with more consistency than what Northampton do, I would probably agree. If we were playing against a top side, a Luton or Huddersfield, for example, and we basically had the exact same game we did yesterday, I'd very much say that was a lucky second half in particular. But in terms of what we did yesterday, we were really strong and resolute at certain points. George Wickens was outstanding, and I think if anybody turns around and says to him that he was lucky, he would tell you where to go. And I just think there were some really strong individual performances that culminated in a really great team performance again at the back yesterday. I think there's also no shying away from the fact that we didn't do anything in the second half in terms of going forward. There wasn't a single shot. And I get that when people see that, they get worried. I understand that. And in a way, as you should. If we talk a lot, especially on this podcast, about when a game hasn't gone well, we'll try and see if there's any positives to discuss to look at the bigger picture. Or when we do win, we've also got to talk about some of the negatives. And some of the negatives are, again, another sort of second half performance where we've not had a single shot or shot on target, like away at Wimbledon where we didn't have a shot on target at all in the game either. It's definitely worth mentioning. However, for yesterday, to kind of contradict myself with that, it was very much based on game state. Northampton were coming at us and coming at us hard. We had a couple of yellow cards at the back. We were sitting in. We had the 1-0 advantage. We changed our shape at times yesterday to go more defensive. And we were trying to hold on away from home on a Tuesday night towards the start of the season. And I think there are times like that when actually not getting forwards at all in the second half is actually fully acceptable. Yes, obviously, if that starts happening 2, 3, 4 games in a row, then there's a big worry that we have to discuss. But at the moment, I'm fine with us getting a resolute 1-0 victory away from home, because they're the sorts of games that towards the end of the season, you look back on and go, we're in this position because of moments like that, because of games like that, and because of resolute defending in games where you could probably argue, based on the stats, that we should have at the very least drew that game, probably even lost that game. I think on the XG, it should have been 1-0 to Northampton. I believe it's 1.02 XG to 0.17 to Lincoln. So, we don't always just bring up XG when it does suit us, but we will happily discuss it when it doesn't, because yesterday Northampton did have more chances, but they just weren't enough clear-cut chances. And they'll be sat there on their podcast tonight dissecting the fact that they don't know where the back of the net is. And we're lucky that we're not, because Freddy Draper is a proper number 9.
Who was playing in a number 10 position. Yeah, look, it's... I agree with you, fully on that one. And let's not make any bones about it. The second half was a really tough watch. It absolutely was. I think if you have that 45 minutes in the first half, people start to get really antsy, and rightly so. If you come out the blocks like that against Northampton, you would probably say that you've got things to worry about. But I thought we were, as I say, excellent in that first half up till probably around 35 minutes or so. Then Towler gets booked, and the whole game has to change because we don't have that. We don't have that option to bring on the bench. It would likely be that Riley Towler's on the bench, and if somebody, if we have a dedicated left back that goes in for a challenge like that, with still, over 45 minutes to go, Riley would probably come on in the second half for cover. We don't have that cover, and when you've got somebody that's not that experienced, I think, as I say, it's an innocuous moment, but for me, that's kind of what changed the game. So. Right, I'm not 100% where we are on the timing due to the fun and games with the old Virgin Media. So I think we've gone well over the half an hour that we would normally do for the first half of the show. What we'll do is we will have a very brief break. We'll continue to say hello to the folks on YouTube that I think Charlie started with, and we'll be back after a little ad break. So we'll see you in a second.
I didn't think to get any timings for you, by the way, but I think we're at about 30:50 when you dropped out. Just a heads up.
Okay, that's fine. I'll put it together. But,
yeah.
Oh man, I was just sat here. I was like, yeah, cool. This is really. I'm enjoying this one. It's going. Oh, brilliant. Internet's died. Yeah, the sooner I can get rid of Virgin Media, the better. But unfortunately, they're the only ones down my road at the moment. But yeah, I don't know how many people you got through. Did you just click through some comments and say hello, or?
Yeah, there was a few towards the start that we went through. I asked everybody if they didn't have anything better to do on a Wednesday evening than wait for us.
Well, I mean, we've got the Stacey West Ultra, and we've got Steve in, so we're all good on that front.
Certainly do.
David Larder says, evening all, and he asks, do we have a special guest for 400? Unfortunately not. Like I say, we we were discussing things, but as I'm sure most of you are aware, that there are bigger things going on in the world of the Stacey West at the moment. So we've delayed the celebration a little bit until we can all get together. Let's have a look. Dave says evening one and all. John says evening all. There are a lot of comments in here tonight. Emily says happy 400th birthday. Yeah. Leslie says evening lads. Steve says, was that not the luckiest 3 points in an age? I think that might be the comment you were referring to there.
It was, yeah.
PRG Spooky says happy 400th. Jared Fox says, do we think Adam Jackson gets his place on Saturday back? It's probably a comment to pick up on when we come back from the break, so we'll do that. Simon says, how posh is Charlie's house? Long way from student digs. Yeah, he's even got his square halo on. You know,
I do. It's literally shining off my head. Not ideal, but
Kate says, evening both, hope you're well. Can't stay as at work, but wanted to say that cracking finish from Freddie last night. Message ends. Absolutely was. Ian says, good evening. Congratulations on reaching episode 400. Really excited to our start to the season. 100%. Cockwaddle, wonderful name, says happy 400th there, Paul. Red Wimp says good evening. Richard says, granted he didn't have time to settle last night, but I thought Okoronkwo looked a little lightweight when up against some uncompromising third division defenders. Fair point.
Tuesday night away at Northampton, quite frankly, I'd be surprised if a young lad coming from a Premier League club didn't look a little underweight.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with the point. I totally get the point. But yeah, it's a very difficult game to kind of come into, isn't it? Proper back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Of fire.
Harry Jackson says, I love that you can hear Makepeace's commentary in the footage of just Draper. Evening says John. Keith says, good evening, guys. Got away with that one last night, didn't we? 50-50 challenge, both looking at the ball, never a yellow, says Andy. I agree. And then this is probably when it all went wrong. Ben's had enough. Tell us a joke, Charlie. Just dial up Jez for a chit chat. And yeah, so we'll pick up a couple more. Ben's not happy. I was not happy. I was not happy at all. I don't like it when my internet goes down. And the final few, we've got Christina and says, evening, guys. MK Spoke says, evening, everyone. MK Spokes also says, I don't see a halo. John makes the excellent point of sign of a winning team. Get 3 points when you're not playing great. And then we have a very special message. So happy birthday tomorrow, Charlie.
Yeah, bless him.
That's from Big Tone. So yeah, there we go. Right. That's all the comments. We will come back in very shortly and we will discuss whatever's in the private chat, which has disappeared for me because I disconnected. Yeah, we will discuss the rumor and the question that we've currently got lined up, and then we'll talk a little bit about Bolton. So yeah, in 3, 2, 1. There we go. That is an advert. My internet is fixed, I think, for now, he says. Hopefully, maybe. And we are back. So, Charlie, we had a question in the Discord. We tend to get a lot of questions in the Discord. Get involved if you want to. It's for patrons of the site. And the question came in from Dridimp. Says, last season, we had 9 out of 12 points after 4 games. This season, we have 9 out of 12 points after 4 games. Are we in a better or worse place to push on?
There's 2 parts to this. I don't really think you can say better. Because at the moment we're still sat here saying that we need more players through the door. Last year we were actually talking about how good our squad depth was at this time in the transfer window. I don't think we made a single signing on deadline day, did we, last year? So that's the sort of position that we were in this time last year. But at the same time, the other side to it is this is probably an easier league to be able to build up and to get into the top 6, for example, or at the bare minimum the top 10 than what last year was. So are we in a better position to push on from where we are now? I would probably argue yes. But us as a football club right now aren't in the better position because we still need a couple more bodies through the door. So if we could do the business that the club clearly want to do in the last 2 weeks of the window, then I think the answer is we are. But I'm not willing to say that quite yet.
Yeah, I would agree. I think in terms of a club, I think probably we're in the same, if not a better position. In terms of a squad, like you say, we're still. I would argue that we're too short. Maybe a third one would be comfort more than anything else. But I think the thing that sticks in my mind when this question got asked is that we have a more settled squad. We've got a settled, we don't have to have huge amounts of change. Obviously, we did lose 3 big players over the summer. We're hopefully going to get those replaced. But the rest of the squad that's there, and we said this early on, is that it feels like it feels like we've still got quality there. Like, yes, we've lost the jewels, but we've still got the crown. It's a lot of we've got a quality bunch there. We just need to add to it and get that depth. And I think once we get a couple more bodies through the door, once we do have that depth, and let's not forget Don Jeffries has still got to come back as well. I think he's not going to jump straight in and be the exact player that he was last season. We know that he's not had a pre-season. But there will be players that come back and hopefully will be able to make an impact on the squad. I think in terms of pushing on and kicking on, the money that we've got for Makama is obviously going to have some sort of an impact on what we can do going forward as well. So it's a tricky question to answer. I think immediate impact of on the pitch, we're probably in a worse spot. But in terms of pushing on for the future, I'd probably say we're about the same, if not a little bit better. So,
well, let's as well with that, think about the transfer funds that have come in this summer. And the ability that gives us too. The question is about pushing on. The amount of money that we've brought in this year, this window, to be able, we can reinvest that to be able to push on. So in that sense, we probably are in a little bit of a better position as a club. Like I say, as a squad at the moment, not quite, but as a club, I would very much agree with your point there. I think there were times last year where it felt like we were treading water. And you start talking about the off the field stuff, and although we are all very positive about what goes on at this football club off the field, there's no denying that we are, small fish, big pond. And we especially were last year. In the budget table, some people call it an excuse as an excuse. It wasn't that. It was just simply a conversation that needed to be had about our realistic expectations and where that kind of placed us. We know the first half of the year it was 90th place, second half jumped up slightly to 70th, but we're talking slightly as in still a sort of position where you're looking over your shoulder after the Easter weekend. Now you think about the kind of money that we've brought in this year, we can start looking up again, not necessarily saying that, we're going to go and be one of the biggest spenders in the league, because obviously we're not, but we can start looking up in the sense of we can now challenge in slightly better pools instead of, those rankings of A, B, C players. And whereas we were maybe at C, now we can go into B. We're not talking the A-listers of £1 million, £2 million a player, like some other clubs in League One are. But it means that we're less likely now, hopefully, to be losing out on players to other clubs around us in that kind of same position. Look at Peterborough. They had that model for a long time, and they were able to build on it and go from strength to strength. Okay, granted, and now regressing, so maybe not an example you want to use for this season, but hopefully we can now start doing that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So say that we need 2 bodies in at least, 3 to feel more than comfortable. It does appear that we may be on the verge of the first of those 2 that we feel that we need. Lots of activity and lots of discussion around the internet today, which does suggest that even Varfolomiev is on his way to Sinsel Bank. Nothing is confirmed as of yet, but it does appear that he will be an imp at some point very soon. I wonder if he potentially comes in and makes the squad for the trip to Bolton on Saturday. I'd be, part of me would be a little bit surprised if he didn't come straight in, but we'll see. I mean, I imagine at this stage it's probably just dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and making sure that the paperwork's all solid before we get him announced. But it would appear, according to a few bits on social media, that it's close and that he's in the building, Charlie?
Yeah, I mentioned it when you did just drop out for a few moments. There's that photo on social media that kind of takes you back a little bit, and that's proper transfer window speculation on social media that you love to see. The only thing I hoped is if it was actually in the Bentley car park and not down at the ground, but I believe potentially even a Ukrainian flag around him as well. Obviously, whether that is him, could just be an academy player trying to play a prank on us all, which would be rather funny.
Oh, could you imagine?
Oh, I would. Do you know what?
Could you imagine?
I'd love it. I would absolutely love for that to be the case. Obviously, I want him to come through the door, but it'd be great, especially if the club were to sign off on something like that just to try and take the mick. But yeah, no, by all accounts, looks like this could be a really strong signing if and when this does get over the line. Slovan Liberec is his current side, and they do play in the top flight of Czech Republic. And they're a great club for developing talent if my Football Manager saves of the past few years have anything to go by. They are always one of those that I do make sure to scout and get team reports on. Look, he looks like he's going to be a solid enough defensive midfielder, Ukrainian under 21, and I don't think we can snub that at all until our nose is up at that at all. Right-footed, still young, only 21 still himself. And lots of senior minutes, obviously, in the top flight, which is really impressive. Likely to kind of be holding that same Ethan Errahon style role that we saw. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see what that does to our midfield if he does come in. But there's no denying that it's going to be a bit of a different game to what he's maybe used to. The pace, the physicality, the style that you see in the EFL is a lot different to what you see in many other European leagues. So it might take a little bit of time to adapt, maybe a little bit more than what it did for someone like Errahon coming just down from Scotland. But again, if he can very much live up to the hype that seems to be surrounding him, we could have a really good player on our hands to be one of those sorts of B-tier stars to be able to take us further up the EFL.
Yeah, definitely. It does sound like this could be our club record buy, which would be a hell of a thing to break in the same window that we also have our club record sale. So, yeah, interesting one. And keep your eyes peeled on the socials. Hopefully tomorrow for that one. I know Chris Ray's got his pencils out already, and that is not a euphemism. So that'll be an interesting one. But as I say, could well be in the squad for the trip to Bolton on Saturday. We are going to have a preview video live, but given that Bolton are playing and kicking off in 3 minutes' time, the folks from Trotter Chatter, they sort of said, can we do tomorrow? So it will be tomorrow evening that preview goes up. Keep your eyes on the YouTube channel for that one. But yeah, it also makes the game quite difficult to preview from a Lincoln City perspective. From a Lincoln City fan looking at Bolton perspective, because you can't get too much of a feel for everything from those 3 games. Obviously they played 3 in the league, one in the cup, which sounded like a manic game in the cup. Was it 3-3 against Sheffield Wednesday? I didn't.
There's some really nice goals scored in that one as well.
Yeah. Okay. Just a very quick. Yeah, very quick one actually. Andy S has just said, any clues on Lewis? He never gets a mention. I think he's nursing a slight injury at the moment. So as soon as he's back in, I think he's back on the grass now. So yeah, when he's back in training, we should hopefully get a bit more info. But yeah, Bolton, difficult one to kind of pick apart and work out what to expect from them.
Well, I think with Bolton, there's no denying they've had a little bit of a mixed start to the season. You could argue before last night's game we kind of had as well. The first 2 games in particular were utter polar opposites. At home against Reading, we had a nice, composed and calm 2-0 victory, the exact kind of home league start to the season that you would want. And then we went away from home, penalty, red card. There was no real calmness, no real composure. And it was exactly what you didn't want from a game towards the start of the season. And then obviously Plymouth had a little bit of everything, but we were lucky. Well, I say lucky, but obviously we came away with the victory in that one. So at the moment, we're looking at it in kind of a real positive light. If we'd have lost against Plymouth, for example, we wouldn't really be talking maybe as positively as we are right now. But at the moment, we are, because obviously we have got those 9 points from 12. And at the moment, Bolton are 4 from 9. So again, more or less as middle of the road as you can get to start the season. I think we know what we can get from them in some areas. They are a side that are going to have possession. They're going to be a side that are on the front foot. They're going to try and use their wide players, specifically their fullbacks and wing backs, to really try and get the ball further up the pitch. They're going to press out from their centre backs. We know the kind of style of play that Bolton will try and employ in that. And realistically, away from home, this is probably our toughest test so far. You think so far our games away from home against Wimbledon and Northampton, they're two sides that many, myself included, have predicted to be in the relegation zone at the season's end. So this being against a side who will be fighting for the playoffs as an absolute minimum, it's going to be a big test, and it's going to be a real big test for our kind of resolute defence and those moments in which we try and get the ball up the pitch quickly. Are we going to see the likes of Rob Street being able to bring the ball down like we have seen so far in some of his moments of brilliance, bring the ball down from a long ball from the back and be able to create opportunities? It will be a little bit more counter-attack football in that sense, and probably a little bit more direct as well. And I think there's a place for that in this game. So I don't mind it at all. And don't expect too much of our play to kind of come out from the back and go through the middle of the pitch. I certainly do expect that little bit more directness, but I think that's the way that we can beat Bolton. Granted, I would more than happily take a draw, but I think there's definitely some weaknesses that we can exploit.
Yeah, I'll fully admit I haven't seen much of Bolton so far this season. I'm hoping to catch as much of the game tonight as I can. Just out of interest, Ethan O'Ryan is starting tonight for Bolton. So obviously one player that we're very familiar with, one player that I was very pleased to see has left Bolton was Ricardo Santos. We know he's an absolute unit of a defender and he's caused us trouble in the past. But they have made a few signings. I think ones that kind of stand out, obviously Ethan. The other one, is it Thierry Gale, who's come in. Seems like he's a bit of a rapid winger. On the left-hand side, just looking through the other ones that they've brought in here, Sam Dolby in from Wrexham, and yeah, they're the ones that kind of stand out for me as potential, issues, shall we say? What do we think? First off, what do we think that the reaction is potentially going to be for Ethan from the travelling support on Saturday?
I think with the interview that came out last week, I think I got everybody a little bit more riled up, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think there'll be a lot of jovial booing at the bare minimum. I'd like to think there's no actual malice against Ethan in terms of wanting to physically sort of boo him and sort of put him down before the game. But I can imagine there will be a little bit of jovial stick giving towards him. You won't really see many players clapping him onto the pitch, as many fans clapping him onto the pitch. But I'm sure if he did come over towards the end of the game and try to give a round of applause, actually no, if he did come over at the end of the game, probably not going to get that, because knowing what Ethan's like, he will have wound up enough of our players, which will then wind up enough of our fans. So actually, it will probably deteriorate throughout the game, but that is one of Ethan's strengths, and we loved it when it was for us. So I'm sure we're going to hate it just as much when it's against us.
Absolutely. So look, it's just going to be an interesting one. I think the first game for a player, we obviously expected it with Freddy O'Connor against Reading. We didn't get that. He was out of the squad for that. But I think this is the first one where the first game back for a player, against the former side. It's like, oof. Yeah, like you say, that there was a little bit. I wasn't too impressed with how he came across in that interview the other week. But obviously Bolton is the place where he had his red card last season, and that was when things started to go a little bit pear-shaped in general. So if we can wind him up enough to do the same thing again, who knows? Yeah, look, in terms of Bolton, I'm interested to see how we do. Like you say, that they're the team that are going to be chasing the playoffs. They're going to be wanting to be at the right end of the table all the way through the season, and their start that they've had, it's middling. Like you said, that there's not a definitive. Well, I say there's not a definitive leader of the pack. If you're looking at the table at the moment, there is, and it's bloody Stevenage, which is bizarre. But
which kind of proves your point, though.
Yeah. So they will come good. They will start picking up points here and there. I just wonder if it's going to be on Saturday. I think my concern still sits with Riley Towler, not from a skill perspective, not from an ability perspective, but just that experience of, look, if he gets booked early doors, it could again put us on the back foot, and we'd have to deal with that.
Well, because of that, do we start Jacko and leave Hamer on the bench then, so that if that does happen, we bring Hamer on? Yeah.
And that is actually the question that you've done very well to remember there, Charlie, that I'd completely forgotten about. So excellent presenting work. From Gerard Fox this evening, or do you think Adam Jackson gets his place back on Sunday after being sent off and lucky not to give a penalty away against Reading? I think we do start with Jacko. I think an Adam Jackson that's had a couple of weeks to stay fit and not be involved in 90, 180 minutes of football, I think that's a better Adam Jackson that we can start. Obviously, Tom Hamer did play 90 on Tuesday night. I would expect to see him involved. I would probably say, I would agree with you in that we'd start with Jacko and maybe drop Hamer to the bench. Not through anything that Tom Hamer's done wrong, just that Jacko is now available. And then, Andy says here, do we start Hamer at left back? I would probably start with Riley Towler and then bring Hamer on if he's needed, because we know that Hamer's got the experience, a little bit more experience behind him than Riley Towler has. So that would be my shout. I don't know if you'd agree on that one.
I'm not sure. I think no matter what kind of a start to the season in terms of the first two games Adam Jackson had, it doesn't matter. He's still a top class defender for us, and he brings a level of experience and a level of assuredness that I don't really think anybody else at the moment, even Sonny Bradley, who we've seen some really good spells from him so far. I don't even think he brings me that same level of confidence and comfort as what Adam Jackson does, purely because I haven't seen enough of it yet. Whereas obviously Adam Jackson has done it for us for 5 years now, which is just incredible to kind of say for him there. So yeah, for me, I do probably agree. And then it's about who goes left back. I think what would probably happen if Tom Hamer were to come on for Riley Towler, let's say at halftime or on the 60th minute, I think you'd be more likely to see Tariq go left back and Tom Hamer go right back, if I'm honest. I just think Tariq has probably just got that slight more experience being able to move to the other side of the pitch and it not really be that much of a weakness for us. But also it depends on where we're at in the game at that point. Are we actually going to look at just bringing on a fifth defender? Are we looking to potentially shore it up? Tom Hamer was effectively playing right wing at one point against Reading. So we're going to see something like that again. I think Jacko starts. I think it just gives us a little bit more tactical flexibility going forward if we do have those options off the bench, because obviously so far we've not had any defensive options to be able to come on late on. And starting Towler and only having Jacko on the bench only gives you a centre-back option, because you're not putting Adam Jackson at right or left back.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, are we going to be bold enough to make a prediction, or are we going to wait until the game game tonight to finish before we think what we're going to think about Bolton?
No, I'm willing to give a prediction. I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think we're going to obviously try and sort of shut up shop at the back and try and get those opportunities going forward a little bit like we did, especially in the first half of yesterday's game. So I am going to go for a 1-1 draw.
That was going to be mine as well. I think it's going to be the first draw of the season on Saturday. I'd be really happy to take a point from Bolton, particularly as we're pretty sure they're going to want to be up at the business end of the table throughout the course of the season. So, right, there we go. That is Bolton looked at. We are an hour and 10 into the podcast. That is obviously with a 4 or 5 minute break when my internet died. Charlie, I am reliably informed, covered expertly. So go and check that out on YouTube if you want to. I don't think there's too much else to plug. I think the only other thing, the Lincoln City FC Heritage exhibition at the Cathedral is on until Sunday. So if you haven't, go and check that out. I think we'll be heading up at the weekend. But I don't think there's anything else unless you've got anything, Charlie.
No, not necessarily. The EFL Hub podcast was out yesterday, so if you do want to listen to me and Chris spout a bit of rubbish about the rest of the EFL, then I think you should definitely go over and listen to that. We are trying to grow that. So, that's the only other shameless plug that I can think of.
Well, there you go. That has been episode number 400 of the Stacey West podcast. A big old milestone for us to hit. We would... I'm sure everybody on the team would like to thank every single person that has downloaded an episode, has watched an episode, whether it's been on YouTube as a playback or as a live. We love having the live audience in. It's just added so much to us, to the podcast to be able to do that. So we do appreciate each and every one of you. But does leave us with only one thing that is left to say. And of course, Charlie, that is up the imps.
Up the imps.